Since 2015, Jared Stillman has rocked Nashville sports.
That team freaking stinks.
And now he's back. The takes are hotter than ever.
I mean, let's be honest, he just can't coach.
Welcome to Stillman and Company.
Stillman and Company on the 440 Sports Network, presented by Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical on YouTube at Stillman and Company. As the distinguished gentleman says, and I'm sure he and I will get into it today at times like we always do, but as TDG says, take off the slippers, hit the like button, and enjoy, and hit the subscribe button as well. If you are not subscribed to the Stillman and Company program, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Again, we keep climbing up with our subscriptions. I was kind of laughing my tush off the other day because, well, I'm just kind of comparing the views that this show gets to some of the contemporaries, and it's, well, I'll just leave it at that. So let's start today on what is a loaded show. I was not exactly sure if we were going to be able to fit everything I wanted to get into today. And again, I feel like I'm totally honest with the audience. This is where the rubber kind of met the road as far as the new show is concerned. You know, again, when it comes to a YouTube video, I could do like 5 a day, cut them all down and say, okay, here's video 1, video 2, video 3, video 4, you know, etc. Or I could do what I really set out to do, which was I am just trying to put together, you know, a daily show every day that would mirror the old show that I used to do to a certain extent. And there was a lot of stuff today, some stuff that I'm like, I got to save this for tomorrow and everything else. But today we have a good Cam Ward film review. And this good Cam Ward film review is not from somebody who I would think is biased. So, no disrespect to Tic Tac Titan. No disrespect to our buddies at Music City Audible, which, by the way, is on the 440 network. And I do like those guys. Like, I'll criticize them. And I think Justin Mello, who I really like, I think he gets in his feelings a little bit too much about Cam Ward and about what he wants to believe as opposed to what's true. And I get it. I understand. But I like those guys. But when those guys have a film review, I kind of have to shrug it off. Because everything that those guys say is Cam's great, everybody else stinks, coach stinks. Look at this one play Cam almost made, and it's not Cam's fault that Cam didn't make it. So I just brushed those off. But Ted Nguyen of The Athletic is not a in the satchel homer for Cam Ward. At least I don't think he is. I haven't been keeping up with a lot of his film breakdowns. Maybe he is, you know, a national guy who's like Mel Kiper with Will Levis, just infatuated with somebody. But for right now, I'm going to say this guy I don't think is biased. And he's got a story up at The Athletic, the film review, in which he broke down the 3 rookie quarterbacks who started this week, Shedeur Sanders, Cam Ward, and Tyler Shuck. And by the way, let me say this, Tyler Shuck, and I'm just going off the PFF stuff because I haven't watched the Saints play. Tyler Shuck apparently is bowling, but that's a different discussion for a different day. And when it comes to Tyler Shuck, I thought Tyler Shuck was a backup quarterback when I watched him play college football every week last year at Louisville, and it looks like Tyler Shuck's playing well. So maybe I don't know everything. That's it. Ted Nguyen writes at The Athletic what I think a lot of you have been screaming, saying, quote, the numbers don't tell the whole story of the top pick, who is playing in as bad of an environment for a young quarterback as there could be. He's on his second play caller this season, throwing to receivers who would not start for most NFL teams behind an awful offensive line. If you look past the numbers and see the film, there's so much to like about Ward's play from the pocket. Of course, he has room to improve, but he's seeing and doing so many advanced things. Nguyen continues. He says, Ward's tape is littered with these types of plays in which his teammates have let him down. His production has been disappointing, but there is plenty to like about how Ward is developing. The Titans have to find the right coach and upgrade the talent around him, but there's a lot of holes to fill. Such is life of a quarterback picked number 1 overall. And he's saying in The Athletic what many of you people have been saying about Cam. Cam has bad coaching. Cam has bad weapons. And thus, if I squint really, really hard and I see Justin Graver's film breakdown, you can actually see it's not Cam's fault. Come try ya. It's amazing, right? But here's my problem with this. And again, I understand. People are going to believe what they want to believe. But when it comes to Cam, what I can't get over is I feel like everybody, whether it was, again, Justin Graver, who I love, but compared Cam Ward to Mahomes and called him the perfect quarterback prospect, whether it was the Titans themselves, I feel like so many people ignored all offseason and ignored when they decided to draft Cam that they were banking on Cam being so good that he can eventually, not exactly as a rookie, but he eventually can overcome bad coaching or he can overcome a bad roster. Because that's why you draft a guy number 1 overall. They were making the case that Cam was such a unique talent that the environment with which Cam was going to be placed didn't matter. The idea was, hey, the quarterback is so good and he's out there that you go and you take the quarterback and then you figure everything else out later. And even though the Titans didn't say it, that's what they did. They were unsure of the head coach. They can say whatever they want at the time. They fired him less than halfway into the season. We all know Callahan was on the hot seat to begin the year. We all know that they had a bad roster. They admitted that at the beginning of the year, and they took the quarterback anyway. You knew the receivers were bad. Calvin Ridley was the best receiver they had. Now, a lot of you guys are saying, well, he put up 1,000 yards with Levis, so he's going to put up 2,000 yards with Cam. But again, you knew the roster was bad. They knew the roster was bad. Some of you didn't want to believe the coach was bad, but the coach was bad. And this was a bad situation to put Cam Ward into. And so the coach is on the hot seat, but that doesn't matter because they thought, and a lot of you thought, that Cam was so good that all this other stuff, the coach he was inheriting, didn't matter. And that Cam was going to develop into a great player no matter what the situation was. And that is what bothers me when it comes to the Cam Ward excuse making that we all seem to see now.
The Cam Ward excuse of the day.
When you decided to draft Cam Ward, you said, your actions said, Cam Ward will be able to overcome whatever we're going to throw at him. We don't have a very good team. We don't have a very good offensive line. We don't have very good receivers. We probably don't have a very good coach. But that's okay because Cam Ward is so good and he's going to develop to be so great that none of that will matter. And now all I hear is excuse after excuse after excuse about how it's Cam's teammates that are letting him down. And it's Cam's coaches that are letting him down. And yes, Van Jefferson dropped a pass he should have caught. But that doesn't make up for the pass that Chimere DK was wide open down the field and Cam Ward missed him. And yes, I know Patrick Mahomes doesn't complete every pass. I got it. But he completes enough of them to be dangerous. Cam's career high in passing is 259 yards. That is not dangerous in the NFL in 2025. So that's what bothers me, is the excuse making that is happening now and the goalpost moving that is happening now that has been done for Cam Ward this season is what gives me such little faith in Cam Ward actually developing into a franchise quarterback. Everybody tells me if you get him a better roster and you get him a better coach, then you will see But the truth is, you knew your coach wasn't very good. You knew your roster wasn't very good. So when you drafted him with the understanding that he could survive that and he could develop through that. And yet all I hear now is give Cam better weapons and let's see. Okay. Well, can I ask how they're going to get Cam better weapons? If the season ended today, the Titans will need to get Cam Ward the following: a starting center, a starting right guard, a starting tight end, 2 starting receivers, and a starting running back, as well as a partridge in a pear tree. The Titans have 1 first-round pick and 1 second-round pick. More on that in a second. And that's before we even get to the defense, which will need pass rushers and at least 3 new starting corners. So let's say Amy Adams Strunk gives them the green light this offseason to spend $280 million in cash. That's what they spent this year. And so what they have committed for next year would give them room to spend $140 million in cash. Well, the second, third overall pick is going to be, north of 33 million. So you're looking at 35 million and then probably another 5 for the second round. So let's just say 40 million for the rookies. So that's $100 million the team will have to spend. So let's say Amy says, go out and buy Cam a team. Okay. 40 million for George Pickens. That's what it's going to cost. Because George Pickens in year 1 is going to make more money than he'll make on any of the other years of his deal. And you're probably looking at a deal for Pickens north of $30 million. So year 1, 40 million cash for Pickens. Year 1 cash for Breece Hall. You want to get him. 15 million. Need a center. Tyler Linderbaum. He'll be the top guy in the market. 20 million. Need another receiver. Romeo Dobbs. 15 million. Well, are you good enough now? Because that right there, between Pickens, Breece Hall, Linderbaum, and Dobbs, I just spent $90 million, which leaves you with $10 million left over, and we have not spent a single dollar on defense yet. Also don't have a tight end. And boy, you need defensive backs. And right now, we've had a bunch of mock drafts flood the zone this week, with Trevor Sikkema at Pro Football Focus dropping one, and Field Yates at ESPN dropping one this morning. And in both cases, they have the New York Giants with Jackson Dart at quarterback, trading out of number 1 and dealing Fernando Mendoza. So in one case, I believe it's the Rams who used the Falcons pick to trade up, and they draft Mendoza. And in another, in Field Yates this morning, it's the Jets that move up to number 1 with the Giants, and they draft Fernando Mendoza, and they use 2 first-round picks and a second-round pick, I believe, to move up from 4 to 1. In both mock drafts, Dante Moore Jr. goes number 2 overall to the Las Vegas Raiders. And if the Las Vegas Raiders end up with the top pick, they're going quarterback. So, you're now stuck at 3rd. The quarterbacks are gone. The Giants have traded that pick. They get the spoils of you having won on Sunday. They get all the picks from either the Jets or the Rams. The Raiders have their quarterback now. And now you're stuck at number 3. And in each of the 2 mock drafts, Trevor Sikkema, Pro Football Focus, Field Yates, ESPN, they have the Titans drafting Avril Reese, the pass rusher out of The Ohio State University. So let's say Avril Reese is the best player in the class, and the Titans draft him, and they sign the top of the market guys. I've got $10 million left. I still don't have a tight end. I don't have any defensive backs. And I still have a roster with massive holes. And the point I'm trying to make, the reason that I am using these draft picks and saying, all right, fine, go sign the top guys off the market. So now you got Romeo Dobbs, and now you've got George Pickens, and now you've got Breece Hall, and now you've got Tyler Linderbaum, is I'm saying, okay, fine. Go out there and build a team around Cam. Because The point I'm making is that in order to justify drafting Cam where they did, Cam has to be someone who could elevate the entire organization. That's the point. That's what these great elite quarterbacks do. Now, look, they can't turn a bad team into a good team. Because if they could, Patrick Mahomes would do that right now in Kansas City. But that Kansas City team, they might be as bad as the Titans, with the exception of the quarterback. And I'm dead serious about this. That Titans team is bad, and we talk about how bad the roster is. That Chiefs team, outside of Chris Jones, who doesn't look the same anymore, Mahomes, who does look the same, Creed Humphrey, the center, and maybe one of their DBs, Jalen Watson, one of those guys, they look awful. Their line stinks. Their receivers stink. Kelsey is cooked. They're awful. They've won 6 games this year. There is a difference. So in order to justify drafting Cam where the Titans did, Cam has to be somebody who elevates the entire organization. That's what Joe Burrow does. That's why the Bengals made it to the Super Bowl with a moron head coach, Brian Callahan as their offensive coordinator, and no offensive line because they had Joe Burrow. And yet there are so few guys on the planet who are capable of doing what Joe Burrow has done. And the Titans, and many of you people out there, you all told me when they decided to pick him that Cam was that guy. And now the argument is, well, it's not fair that Cam is bad by every metric. So if your argument today is Cam is doing well for a rookie on a bad team with bad coaching, then the chief decision makers who run this team, who set it up that way, are now the ones that are going to be tasked with getting good coaching and building out a roster when they've already proven that they've overvalued the biggest decision they had to make last year. Again, I keep hearing things when people say, oh my God, just get Cam a good coach and let's see. You're sold Chad Brinker is going to land a great coach? Again, all due respect to Mike Borgonzi. You think he's going to go out and get a great coach? And that's why, again, losing to the Browns on Sunday was crucial. Because in this year's draft, you need the number 1 pick. You need the number 1 pick so you can pull off another Rams-like trade that netted you Jack Conklin and Corey Davis and Derrick Henry and Jonnu Smith so that you can build the team around Cam the way the Titans built the team around Mariota. So, again, you can say whatever you want, but I keep reading about how, oh, no, Cam's actually good. It's just everybody else who's bad. And then I watch Cam overthrow Tony Pollard coming out of the backfield. And I'm like, okay, for every pass he has where Van Jefferson drops it, or every play he has where somebody misses a block, there's a play where Cam holds onto the ball too long. Cam floats in the box. Cam, again, Blake Bedingfield at paulkaharski.com, his write-up, he's the former Titans director of college scouting. He basically wrote, quote, Ward was not accurate, missing some wide open receivers, one for what would have been an explosive play of 30 yards downfield to Chimere Dike. The quarterback continues to be inconsistent each week. I know the team wants Ward to take some major steps forward in the next 4 weeks, but it doesn't look like that is going to happen based on his current play. Blake Bedingfield saying, no, it's still bad. No. It's still bad. So I'm just saying, when it comes to the Titans and it comes to the Cam excuses and it comes to you have to really squint. You have to really try to make the tape say, Cam's playing well. Because apparently, Shedeur Sanders had 20 points on Cam when it came to the PFF grade on Sunday. Tyler Shuck, and again, I didn't watch Tyler Shuck play Tampa Bay, so I'm not here to tell you what. I'm just telling you what the PFF grade said. Tyler Shuck had 30 points on Cam as a graded passer on Sunday. But oh no, it's only the Titans that have bad coaching. It's only the Titans that have a bad roster. Again, did you watch Stefanski coach the game? It can't just be only Cam who has a bad coach and has a bad roster. So that's the first thing. And again, I understand we all want to believe in Cam. If you are a Cam believer, and that's fine, call them the Cam boys. If you are a Campbell, your opinion's not going to change based on anything that will happen this year. And if you're somebody like me and you really don't believe in Cam, barring a miracle, my opinion is not going to change unless Cam goes out there and turns out 370-yard performances and doesn't turn the ball over and hits guys right in the hand consistently. My opinion's probably not going to change until next year either. And I'm just going to have to learn to live with that. But again, don't do the thing where in April you told me, oh, no, it doesn't matter that this coach sucks, and it doesn't matter that they don't have infrastructure for him to be successful. And last year, Ridley had 1,000 yards with Levis, so he's going to have 2,000 yards this year. Don't do that and now say, well, he doesn't have players around. Right. I told you. Go get the players and then go get the quarterback. No. Cam's too good for that. Okay, well, now you're here. Let's talk Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. I love Hiller. Hiller takes great care of my home. They can do the exact same for you. Hiller has been in business since 1990. They are family owned and operated with 100% satisfaction of happy you'll be, or that service is free. Boom. If a customer is not pleased with the work performed, Hiller will make it right. I know this because I use Hiller at my home. They say learn more at happyhiller.com. That's where I go. I just pull it up on my phone. I go right there, happyhiller.com, and whenever I have to schedule an appointment, I just schedule it through my phone. And then immediately I get a response from Hiller that's like, the technician will be there tomorrow between 10 and noon or whatever time it is. And I love that because they have professional experience, trustworthy technicians that come into your home and leave it clean and better than they found it. Care is their core value, and they believe that when they care about others, everybody wins. And they'll take care of the customer on every job, every time. That's Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Proud supporters of the Preds, the Vols, and Vandy. Hiller, call the Happy Face Truck today. So, on the Cam Ward front, I want to talk about Jalen Hurts here for a second, if I may. Because right now, I'm thinking best case scenario for Cam Ward is that he develops into a quarterback like Jalen Hurts. That's the comp that I think now I feel comfortable having watched so much Cam. And I brought up Kyler Murray because I think Kyler Murray was a number 1 overall pick. Now, I never compared their games to each other, but I compared their ability to each other, which is Kyler, in my opinion, is never going to be very good. And I don't think Cam's ever going to be very good. An upper echelon quarterback. But when it comes to Cam's game, the guy I think I would say he probably could mirror is Jalen Hurts. Now, Cam is a little bit bigger. He's an inch taller. And Jalen's a little thicker weight-wise. Jalen has bigger hands than Cam. But I think their games are somewhat similar. Not overly accurate. Can't necessarily see over the rush all the time. So they've got to throw the ball against man coverage outside the numbers. Not incredibly accurate, though I think Jalen's a little bit more accurate than Cam. Cam is much better as far as the improvising goes. Making one of those plays where he runs around and then throws off of his back foot. Jalen is probably a better natural athlete. But if I have a comp for what Cam can be, I'm going to go with Jalen Hurts. Which is why I think right now is the perfect time to have what I call the Jalen Hurts discussion. Because if somebody had comped Cam Ward to Jalen Hurts this spring, Titans Twitter would have been ready to throw a parade. Oh my God, Jalen Hurts! He just won the Super Bowl! He's the Super Bowl MVP! And I think we can all agree that if the Titans can get a Super Bowl MVP out of Cam Ward, then he absolutely, unequivocally would be worth the number 1 overall pick. Eli Manning was not a first ballot Hall of Famer, but Eli Manning was a 2-time Super Bowl MVP, and I think Giant fans are happy with what they got out of Eli, whom they technically didn't draft number 1 overall. They drafted Phillip Rivers 4 overall and then traded him for Eli, but they essentially drafted Eli number 1 overall. But last year, when Jalen Hurts was quarterbacking the Eagles to the Super Bowl, I was actually shocked by how many people thought Jalen Hurts was the engine of the Eagles Super Bowl Express and not just simply a passenger. But Jared, he won the Super Bowl. And I kept saying, yeah, so did Brad Johnson under similar circumstances. In 2002, the Bucs had good coaching with John Gruden and Monte Kiffin, an incredible defense with Hall of Famers, guys like Warren Sapp and Derek Brooks and Rondé Barber and John Lynch and Simeon Rice. And you guys remember that defense. 2 good wide receivers, Keyshawn Johnson, Keenan McCardale. Joe Jaravicious was their third. He was very good. 2 running backs, Michael Pittman Sr. and Mike Allstott. And they had Brad Johnson running the operation. And Brad Johnson ran the operation efficiently. But Brad Johnson, in that era of quarterback play, was not Peyton Manning. He was not Brett Favre. He was not Tom Brady. He was not Rich Gannon. He wasn't Steve McNair. Nobody in today's game has it as easy as Jalen Hurts does. And that's just the truth, which again brings me back to Cam. Last year, Jalen had the best running back in the NFL, 2 wide receivers, a tight end, 2 all-pro tackles, the best defensive coordinator, tons of talent on defense, Kellen Moore calling the plays, the best offensive line coach in the league. What else could he have asked for? And I remember doing Sirius XM one day, and I was talking about, hey, Jalen Hurts is good, but like Jalen Hurts ain't that good. And everybody kept saying, no, Jared, they're in the Super Bowl. Super Bowl. That's all that matters. Super Bowl. Super Bowl. And after the Super Bowl was over, I said, guys, I still think Sam Darnold is a better quarterback than Jalen Hurts. And everybody thought I was crazy. And I was shocked. I was shocked that not everybody else could see what I saw, which is that Jalen Hurts did what he was asked to do, but did not go above and beyond to carry the football team. And when we talk about great quarterbacks have the ability to go above and beyond to carry the team. Again, Kansas City sucks this year, but Patrick Mahomes got them into the Super Bowl the last couple of years, not those rosters. Josh Allen, who's he throwing to right now? Nobody. And it doesn't matter. He's league MVP. That's what the great quarterbacks do. But Jalen won the Super Bowl. Right. And that same Jalen Hurts stinks right now. According to Pro Football Focus, Mac Jones has a higher passing grade. And yet, Jalen isn't killing the Eagles. But when Saquon Barkley isn't running like Saquon Barkley did last year, and the defense is ranked 22nd in the NFL instead of number 1, Jalen Hurts can't win games. Jalen Hurts couldn't win games in 2023 when things started to fall apart, and Jalen Hurts can't win them now. And again, it's not Jalen's fault that the Eagles are losing. Their takeaways on defense are down from 6th last year in the NFL to 14th. Their rushing defense is 26th this year compared to 10th last year. And their rushing offense, which was 2nd in the NFL last year, is 22nd this year. But an elite quarterback overcomes that. Tom Brady won a Super Bowl with the 21st ranked defense in the NFL. Jalen Hurts is a passenger. He is not a driver. And that's what takes me back to Cam Ward. That's probably the best case scenario for Cam Ward. That he becomes Jalen Hurts. Get a great running game, get great wide receivers, get a great offensive line, get great coaching, get the number 1 defense, and Cam Ward will be able to win. Seems so simple, right? You don't need to use the number 1 pick on a guy who, again, you can get every single offseason. If you get an elite running game, an elite offensive line, an elite receivers, elite defense, and elite coaching, you can win with far less quarterbacks than the number 1 overall pick in the draft. Just like Philly. They used the 53rd pick on their quarterback. So to justify being the number 1 overall pick in a draft, Cam Ward, in my opinion, has to be a driver, not a passenger. He has to be better than Jalen Hurts. And right now, I think best case scenario is he becomes Jalen Hurts. Again, a great passenger, but not a driver. And you don't draft passengers number 1 overall. So that's the second thing. And we'll get to some of your reaction on all of that. But there was a little nugget that came from Jeremy Fowler. How about this today? And I actually thought maybe I should lead off tomorrow's show with it, but screw it. We'll worry about tomorrow's show tomorrow. According to Jeremy Fowler, NFL insider at ESPN, the Titans will have interest in Matt Nagy as their next head coach. Quote, the Matt Nagy Titans connection is one that comes up in league circles with belief that Tennessee general manager Mike Borgonzi has a good relationship with Nagy from their Kansas City days. Nagy's Chicago tenure has aged well, going 34-31 with Mitchell Trubisky at quarterback. The Chiefs' struggles could affect Nagy's chances, but I expect him, Fowler writes, to be a candidate in Tennessee. Now, I said after the Mike Borgonzi press conference a month and a half ago, I said, I think Matt Nagy's going to be the next coach. And I think the reason that I said at the time that I thought Matt Nagy was going to be the next coach of the Titans was because I do think that you can wash away the Chicago tenure. 34-31. 2 out of 4 years they went to the playoffs. 3 out of 4 years Trubisky was the quarterback. He sucks. 1 of those years Justin Fields was the quarterback. He sucks. Is that Nagy's fault? And you people, you want to believe that Cam is the next Mahomes. Well, who's Mahomes' coach? Matt Nagy. But then it hit me. The reason that I thought so strongly a month and a half ago that Matt Nagy was going to be the next head coach of the Titans was because Mike Borgonzi basically got up there and said, I run the team. Now, we know Brinker's above him, and we know Amy's a wild card. But I asked him basically, what the fuck do you do? And he talked about how, when it comes to Brinker, there's always the head coach and the general manager and the VP and, head of cap, and those guys always work together. But the insinuation Borgonzi was making was that he was the one making the decisions around here. And I'm not saying that I have any evidence that tells me that Mike Borgonzi doesn't make the decisions as far as the Titans are concerned. But I would just say, are we sure Mike Borgonzi is making the decision on the next head coach of the Tennessee Titans? Because if Mike Borgonzi is making the decision on the next head coach of the Tennessee Titans, then I think it will be Matt Nagy. Because I don't think there will be much of a market for Matt Nagy. Because even though we can wash away what happened in Chicago, can everybody else? And things aren't going very well in Kansas City. And as we've learned with all of the Belichick disciples who have seemed to struggle away from the nest of Bill, the truth is, if you're not bringing Mahomes along with you, you're probably not bringing me the Chiefs' secret sauce. So I say that because I wonder who's actually making the call on the head coach of the Tennessee Titans. If Mike Borgonzi's making the call, then I think it's safe to assume Matt Nagy will be the coach. Dave Tobe and Steve Spagnuolo are too old. And if you're Mike Borgonzi, you get one crack at this. Are you really going to hire somebody you don't know? He's never worked with Robert Saleh. Now, Doug Peterson could be in the mix. He's worked with him. I would say Brad Childress, but he's probably a little too old. So, again, it's only if Borgonzi makes that call that I feel certain that Nagy becomes the coach. What does Mike Borgonzi oversee? The way the Titans media, and I still laugh at this, the way Titans media treated it when I had the balls to actually ask him, so what does Chad do did people not know that Borgonzi runs the roster? No, we didn't know that because the Titans keep everything as ambiguous as humanly possible. But what they've decided, what they've told us is Borgonzi runs the roster. And what that omits is Borgonzi picking the coach. So if Borgonzi runs the roster, but he doesn't run the coach, then does Chad Brinker run the coach? Because if Chad Brinker's picking the coach, then how likely is it that Mike McCarthy is in play from the Green Bay days? What about Jeff Hafley, the defensive coordinator who's been a head coach at Boston College before? He's got Packer blood in him. What about those guys? And then when it comes to ownership, I do wonder if they will be hesitant to go all in on a coach that they don't know. They don't know Matt Nagy. They don't know Mike McCarthy. They do know Arthur Smith. And before you say that's crazy, that's ridiculous, they went with Mike Mularkey. John Robinson didn't know Mike Mularkey from a jar of Vicks. And obviously, in the end, John Robinson didn't want Mike Mularkey because all Mike Mularkey did was give John Robinson justification for why he should be the coach, and he still got fired. So ownership's been down this road before. Ownership has said, GM, you hire the coach. One time, it got him Mike Vrabel. The second time, it got him Brian Callahan. If there's anything I've learned about the Titans, is that the number one thing that they always want to do is the exact opposite of the thing they just did. So, again, they fired J-Rob in the middle of the season. They waited until the end of the year to fire Rand. They had a mean guy, Mike Vrabel, as the coach. They hired a nice guy in Brian Callahan. They let the GM lead the search for the last coach. They hired a moron. Are they going to do that again? So, again, Fowler didn't really report anything that we didn't know. Again, the only line in there is I expect him, talking about Nagy, to be a candidate in Tennessee. But I think that's only if Mike Borgonzi makes this call. What does Chad Brinker know about Matt Nagy? What does Amy Adams Strunk know about Matt Nagy? If you told me who's going to carry the most weight in the coaching search, I'll tell you who's most likely to get hired. If you tell me it's Brinker, then I think you've got a really good shot of Mike McCarthy or Jeff Hafley being the next head coach of the Titans. If you're telling me Borgonzi, then I think it's Matt Nagy or Doug Peterson. And if you're telling me it's Amy, I think it's going to be Arthur Smith. Because at the end of the day, the owner is the one who signs the checks. And even though the owner will never say this, the owner runs the organization. Not everybody's Jerry Jones every day where they have to get the credit, but pretty much every owner in the NFL picks the coach. So, I'm just saying, when it comes to that report, I think Nagy's absolutely out there. 2 months ago, after Borgonzi got up there in front of all of us and basically said, hey, Amy and Chad, they let me do what I want to do. I walked out of there saying, Nagy's going to be the coach, but I'm not convinced that they let him do what he wants to do when it comes to the coach. And if they did, then it'd be Nagy. TDG says Robert Saleh's head coach Mike McDaniel as offensive coordinator is the dream combination. Are we sure McDaniel's getting fired? I mean, right now, the Dolphins, who fucking stink, and Tyreek Hill's been hurt, and they traded away Jalen Phillips, they have the same record as the Chiefs. So are we sure McDaniel's getting fired? Not only that, so many people are into Robert Saleh. And I'm like, based on what? Like, why is Robert Saleh such a sexy candidate for the Titan job? Somebody explain this to me. And this is coming from a guy who doesn't know Robert Saleh. But when Robert Saleh was head coach of the Jets, they had a young quarterback. They drafted number 2 overall. In fact, a lot of scouts and executives around the NFL rated Zach Wilson higher than they rated Cam Ward. And Saleh failed. Saleh's offensive line coach with the Jets, you know who it was? Keith Carter, Vrabel's offensive line coach. So what did Robert Saleh do with the Jets that was so good? Well, they built out a great defense, and it's all the Jets' fault, and it's not. That might be true. But again, I'm looking for tangibles from when he did have the job. All I remember with Robert Saleh is I remember Diana Russini report after Diana Russini report about just how incompetent the entire operation was, including Saleh. And I remember Robert Saleh getting up there at the podium during OTAs for the mandatory minicamp and calling Aaron Rodgers' absence excused and setting off a shitstorm that didn't need to be started while Aaron Rodgers was off doing ayahuasca in Egypt or whatever it was he was doing. That's all I remember. I remember Saleh putting his foot into an incredibly unnecessary situation with the Aaron Rodgers minicamp thing. And that's a small thing when it comes to the grand scheme of a guy's tenure. But if you're in year 4 in New York and you don't think you going up to the podium and Aaron Rodgers has already told you where he's going to be and he's not going to be at mandatory minicamp, and you get up there and you say his absence is unexcused and you don't think that's going to blow up, then you do not understand how the media and the NFL work, and you can't be head coach. So a lot of you guys keep talking about Saleh, but I'm like, based off of what? All right, let's get to some more reaction. Adam in Portland says, wonder how many times he's going to say our rookie quarterback sucks today. I have not said that. I have just said if you're going to draft the number 1 overall, at some point he's got to carry the operation. And we can't just sit back and say, well, it's bad coaching and bad players and bad. At some point it's like, Cam's going to need to throw some touchdown passes. Shay says, people saying a rookie quarterback is a bust after plenty of great quarterbacks were bad their rookie year is hilarious. At least give him 2 to 3 years before the bust label. Well, here's what I'll say to that. We can give him time, and they're going to give him time. They're going to give him through next year. Because, again, this year, it's all not his fault. This year, it's the team stinks and the coach stunk. And so now we're going to go hire a coach to coach Cam Ward. And that's going to be, and then next year, you won't get the same excuses. That's it. Cam, when you look at the data, like the PFF stuff, he's so far behind Drake May was where Drake May was last year. He's so far behind where Caleb Williams was. He's been bad. I mean, Caleb's stats last year, and we all know that Caleb and the Bears lost a lot of games. Caleb's stats last year were not bad. Cam's stats are bad. Chase says, I'm tired of the Joe Burrow excuses. That dude is injury prone. Hurt 3 out of 4 years. He had 1 Super Bowl run. He didn't just have 1 Super Bowl run. He went to the AFC Championship game the next year. And again, when it comes to the great Mike Vrabel, all the great Mike Vrabel did here was go to 1 AFC Championship game. Joe Burrow's been to 2. Joe Burrow's been to a Super Bowl. Joe Burrow went to a Super Bowl with a moron as his head coach. Joe Burrow went to a Super Bowl with Brian Callahan, who doesn't even know the rules, as the offensive coordinator. And Joe Burrow went to the Super Bowl with an offensive line that included Titans castoffs like Quentin Spain and Isaiah Prince. If you don't think Joe Burrow is special, you do not get the NFL. Again, the Cincinnati Bengals have been downright pitiful all season long with Joe Burrow hurt. Joe Burrow shows up on Thanksgiving night and lights up the Baltimore Ravens. Joe Burrow is a great quarterback. Now, is Joe Burrow injury prone? Absolutely. And after this latest one, I don't know how you can't see Joe Burrow is injury prone. He's had the hand, he's had the calf, he's had the knee, he's had the foot, he's had it all. And that may be the downfall for Joe Burrow. That may be why Joe Burrow does not go to the Hall of Fame. That is possible. But to sit there and act like Joe Burrow's not a great quarterback in today's NFL is completely embarrassing to you as a football fan. Joe Burrow is an MVP candidate every time he steps on the field. So don't go there on Burrow. You want to say he's injury prone, that's fine. That's your business. I don't actually disagree with that. Ryan says, in relation to me saying the Chiefs roster might be as bad as the Titans roster, Ryan says, please give me Rashee Rice on the Titans. It's not even close. Guys, I don't know about you, but I do watch a lot of Chiefs football since they're always on TV. Rashee Rice sucks. And maybe it's all the extracurricular stuff, but I mean, how many balls does Mahomes have to put square in the hands for him that he will not catch? And I'm not saying Rashee Rice wouldn't start on the Titans because the Titans wide receivers are really bad, but Rashee Rice is not an impact wide receiver. Rashee Rice is not one of these really good players in the NFL that, oh God, if we just had him. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I'll watch NFL football and I'll see a player and I'm like, oh God, if the Titans just had him. Oh, if they just had that guy. Like Kyle Hamilton of the Ravens. I watch him play. I'm like, oh, God, if they just had him. TJ Watt of the Steelers. Oh, God, if they just had him. George Pickens in Dallas right now, the way he's playing. Oh, God, if they just had him. Brock Bowers. Oh, God, if they just had him. Those are the players we're talking about. When it comes to Rashee Rice, I mean, Calvin Ridley, Rashee Rice, whatever. Rashee Rice, sorry. No. When it comes to good players on the Chiefs, Mahomes, Chris Jones, though I think Chris Jones has been kind of knocked down a peg. And then they've got a couple of good DBs. McDuffie's good. I think it's Jalen Watson, the corner. I think he's good. And then other than that, Kelsey is done. Creed Humphrey, the center, is very good. But other than that, that offensive line fucking stinks. The pass catchers stink. Worthy stinks. The Chiefs stink. Matt says, scam Ward. I hate that. Cam Ward will be off this team in a year and a half, luckily. We got to suffer this year, then next year, and it's over. Let me tell you this about Cam Ward. If things are the same this time next year, everybody's getting fired. Every single guy is getting fired. And maybe that's what it's going to have to take. That we're going to have to live through another bad year next year, and then everybody gets fired, and Cam gets let go, and then they can start over again. Maybe then that'll get rid of Brinker. Which, if this team finishes with 2 wins, I don't know how you justify keeping Brinker around. Joe says the local media loves talking down to the fans. Who you talking about, Joe? Name names. By the way, I was laughing today. Kaharski. And, you know, look, I like Paul. And I think when Paul and I did the football show together a couple times, I actually thought it was a really good show. And so I'm not here to just knock on Paul, but Paul has some of the most intellectually dishonest arguments because he gets so worked up about wanting to pick a fight with me. Today, he was talking about how I'm not a real media guy and I just blather on the internet. And I said to Paul, I'm like, Paul, I'm on Sirius XM. That's one of the biggest media companies in the country. And by the way, your website, online, your shows, online, on this network. And he's like, well, what I do is different. Uh-huh. So who's talking down to people? That I do want to know. Like, who's doing the talk down of like, no, Cam's really good. Outside of the 104.5 postgame show, which I got in the car a couple weeks ago, and I flipped on the 104.5 postgame show because I was doing postgame live, and then I was off, and then the 104 postgame was on, so I went to go pick up my kid from my parents' house. And I'm like listening to them say like, well, I think they have the guy in Cam Ward. I'm like, oh, great. Chris says, if Cam is on the Chiefs, how many games do they win? 0. I mean, that Chiefs team is freaking butthole. And if you guys think that the Chiefs aren't, I guess we're just not watching the same games, not watching the same sport. TDG says Joe Burrow will be Dan Marino. I hope that's not the case. I really hope that's not the case when it comes to Joe Burrow. Because watching Joe Burrow play quarterback, it's sexy. Like, I'm not saying he's sexy. I'm saying watching him play the position is sexy. One person said Chase and Big Joe love Cam. I think correct me if I'm wrong, I think Big Joe thinks Cam sucks. I don't listen to that show. I don't think most people listen to that show. In fact, I'm not even sure anybody listens to that show. But I think Big Joe thinks Cam sucks. Because I think he and I have talked about it. But that's just, one way or another. Witty says, hearing this from a guy that got ratioed 3-1 yesterday is hilarious. I love Jared for keeping it real, but him talking about Paul is a pot meat kettle moment. I don't know what that ratio 3-1 thing means. I know that I had a video from yesterday's show where I said, why does Cam have to have elite weapons to prove he doesn't suck? Which, again, I think is a fair question to ask. Trevor Lawrence doesn't have elite weapons. Trevor Lawrence doesn't suck. But I guess I threw that out there, and everyone's like, oh, my God, Jared, you're such an idiot. The Bears have such great weapons. I'm like, do they? They have Justin Jefferson on their team. They have Jamar Chase on their team. They have Brock Bowers on their team. No, they do not. And I think they drafted the wrong tight end, by the way, when it comes to the draft, and they took the kid out of Michigan. And I think Tyler Warren he's one of the guys that I'm like, oh, God, I wish he was on the Titans. Oh, I wish he was on the Titans. Okay, I do want to get to the Daniel Pavia thing, because apparently they had a straw poll out at The Athletic where they took all the Athletics college football writers and they basically said, okay, who are you voting for? If you had a Heisman vote, and I think it was 90-something people or 60-something people, and there's 900 people that vote for the Heisman. So I think it was 60-something writers at The Athletic. And so they took a poll and they said, okay, who are you voting for? And the final poll came out at The Athletic with Fernando Mendoza just nipping Diego Pavia 64-61 points. You get 3 points for a first place vote, 2 points for a second, 1 for a third. And so Mendoza got 14 first place votes. Pavia got 11. Pavia got 14 second place votes. Mendoza got 10. Mendoza got 2 third place votes. Pavia didn't get 1. The difference in the poll is one guy didn't vote for Pavia for one of the 3 spots, and either the same guy or another guy in the poll voted Jeremiah Love as the number 1 choice for Heisman. If I had a vote, and I don't have a vote, if I had a vote, it would be Pavia 1, Mendoza 2, Love 3. That's how it would be. But I do wonder if I was a betting man, and I don't know what the odds are as far as the Heisman's concerned. If I was a betting man, I would bet that Fernando Mendoza is going to win the Heisman Trophy. And here's why. Because of the 900 people that voted on this, I wonder how many of them just shut their minds off to Pavia the same way the committee just shut their mind off to Vandy football. Because Vanderbilt football absolutely had a team that had a legitimate case for the college football playoff. And the committee every week underranked them and made up excuses as to why they needed to rank Vandy lower. And then in the end, they ranked Texas, who had 3 losses with a terrible loss at Florida, ahead of Vandy. And it's not like Texas beat Vanderbilt 41-10. Texas beat Vanderbilt by 3 fucking points. So they were at home. They won by 3. If anything, that tells me the 2 sides are equal. Vanderbilt had 2 losses. Texas had 1 really bad loss, and they had 3 losses. But the committee just constantly turned off their brains to Vandy football. Because I think if you were to take Vandy's resume and you were to take Miami's resume, the only argument for Miami is that they beat Notre Dame. But Miami did not play in the SEC. Vanderbilt did. Miami has a bad loss at home against Louisville. Vandy has 2 losses at Bama, at Texas, both against top 13 teams on the road. Vanderbilt beat Tennessee by 3 touchdowns. Georgia beat them by 3 in overtime. Vanderbilt beat Virginia Tech on the road by 24 points. And I know Virginia Tech stinks, but the reason that's important is because Miami beat Virginia Tech by 17 on the road. So the one common opponent they had, Vanderbilt, beat Virginia Tech by more than Miami did. So Vanderbilt has a very good case for the playoff. And yet, I watched all the shows. College Game Day didn't even mention them. After the fact, it was all talk about BYU falling because they lost in the conference title game. And there was talk about Miami jumping Notre Dame because every week the committee told us that Notre Dame was better than Miami. And then voila, Miami jumps Notre Dame. But there was no talk up there about Vandy. And so I think what happened is the committee just turned their brains off to Vandy football, then made excuses like, oh, well, we've dropped Tennessee out of the top 25 because Vandy beat them so bad. Because the committee just could not accept that Vanderbilt football was good. And I wonder if the committee couldn't accept Vandy football being good because Vandy football's never been good, or if the committee, the old fuddy-duddies that don't like the way college sports are going, don't like the fact that Diego Pavia sued for a 6th season of sports. Again, I don't know. But the point is, there was some sort of anti-Vanderbilt rhetoric because Vanderbilt was consistently criminally underranked throughout the entire process, which means some people in that room turn their brains off to Vandy football. If writers across the country and media people across the country that have these votes, if they turn their brains off to Vandy football and they don't vote Pavia, whereas the Pavia voters vote Pavia 1, but vote Mendoza 2, then Mendoza's going to win the Heisman. And I'll just say this. I would not be upset if Fernando Mendoza won the Heisman because Fernando Mendoza had an incredible season. They're undefeated. He was great in the Penn State game. They went on the road. They beat Oregon. He made the throws in the Big Ten championship game. I'll tell you, Mendoza, he has earned my respect. And if he wins the Heisman Trophy, I'm not going to go crazy about it. I'm not going to be upset about it. I'm not going to any of it. But again, I wonder if the reason that Mendoza wins on Saturday, if he does win, is simply because of the anti-Vanderbilt bias that the committee showed us on a weekly basis. So that's my Heisman Trophy thought there. And then finally, I want to touch on this Notre Dame story. Has anybody been following this? So Pete Bavacqua is the Notre Dame athletic director. And boy, he has been getting clowned about his anger towards the ACC after the ACC made a social media push and they used their television network to try to get Miami into the college football playoff over Notre Dame. And he's getting called out by everybody. Everybody thinks Pete Bavacqua is off his rocker. The Big 12 commissioner came out and said he's making a fool of himself. But let me say this. I don't disagree that Pete Bavacqua needs to take a chill pill as far as being upset at the ACC for the fact that they lobbied for their team to make it into the college football playoff and not their partner team, which is what Notre Dame is to the ACC. But I have to say, even though I disagree with Pete Bavacqua's rhetoric, I was a little surprised the ACC made the push they did, because I saw that on social media when the ACC was tweeting out all about how Miami beat Notre Dame. And I'm like, are you sure you want to take pot shots at Notre Dame? Notre Dame is essentially an ACC member. They're not an ACC member, but they are essentially an ACC member. It's not like they're taking a shot at Alabama, who's never going to have anything to do with the ACC, or Ohio State or Michigan State or Penn State or anybody. But they are partners with Notre Dame. But here's the reason why I was really surprised. Because the ACC needs Notre Dame for survival. Notre Dame doesn't need the ACC. The truth is, in college football, and Florida State and Clemson are about to learn this the hard way because they want out of the ACC, and they think they are just so important. But the truth is, we can do college football without the ACC. We'd rather have them in it, but we can do it without them. The same way we can do college football without the Pac-12. The same way we can do college football without the Big 12. Here's who we can't do college football without? The SEC, Ohio State, Michigan, and USC, and Notre Dame. That's who you have to have. And since Ohio State, Michigan, and USC are all in one conference, the Big Ten gets a say. So it's really the SEC, the Big Ten, and Notre Dame. The ACC needs Notre Dame for their survival. Notre Dame does not need the ACC. If Notre Dame were forced into a conference, they could go to the Big Ten. They'd be wanted. They could go to the SEC. They'd be wanted. If they want to play games against other schools and load their schedule up with Rice and Memphis and Houston Baptist and Scarbini Tech and the service academies, they could, and NBC would pay for it. Notre Dame does not need the ACC. The ACC needs Notre Dame. And if college football is going to survive beyond the two-party system in the future, it will require Notre Dame making the choice to formally join the ACC. If the ACC is going to survive long-term, they need Notre Dame, which is why the ACC bends over backwards for Notre Dame. They let Notre Dame into the conference in 2020 during COVID, and they put Stanford and Cal in at the behest of Notre Dame. That said, at some point in this relationship between the ACC and Notre Dame, the ACC, the anxious partner in this relationship, is going to need to force Notre Dame, the avoidant partner, to either join the conference or not. And I think this was a sign from the ACC to Notre Dame, who didn't say this during 2020 when they could have. And Notre Dame needed to join a conference so that they could play because of COVID. Yeah, we've been over backwards for you for years, but at some point, we have to do what's best for us. And I applaud the ACC for doing that. That's going to do it for us today. Great show here on the program. Bunch of stuff to get to. Be sure to like and subscribe. Be sure to tell all your friends out there to watch this program, Stillman and Company. Follow on all the social media, TikTok, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram. Shit, we're all over it. Follow on all of it. Like and subscribe. Tell your friends, Stillman and Company. We'll see everybody live tomorrow at 2 o'clock.